a solar superpower roadmap for 50 gigawatt solar by 2022. And the discussion will be there. And as he rightly said, we'll publish a white paper on it. I think we will straight away start with the session.
So we'll request Mr. Subramaniam to start and give his viewpoints.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Subramaniam. I'm from Ozobear Solar. And we had the experience of launching ourselves into solar in the year 2005. So as far as we are concerned, we are covering the entire space as manufacturer of solar panels, from wafers to cells, cells to modules, and as EPC and also as developers. So I can give you reasonably bird's eye viewpoint of all the three facets of the business. First point, about 50 gigawatts, I'm a firm believer that this will have to happen, and it is in our hands to make it happen. If you all look at the decade of 1990, we saw a massive revolution in the form of IT revolution in the country. Thousands of jobs got created. We became almost a formidable source of exports for information technology, software development, software services, BPO, all these things. It was a major revolution. If you look at start of 1990 to 2000, there was a dramatic growth in this line of business. Maybe more than $30, $40 billion got created in no time, with straight trained manpower coming from our educational institutions, and there is a need in the world which we could fill it up. Let us move on to the decade of 2000. We all saw the mobile revolution. If you look at 2000, the number of mobile connections were less than 2 million. And whereas the number of landline connections were about 30 million or something, 3.2 million plus. But during the decade of 2010, that is 2000 to 2010, you saw a dramatic growth in mobiles. Probably nobody ever estimated it will cross 150 million, but actually by 2010, we had more than 700 million connections. We made it happen. I don't see any reason why we cannot convert this decade of 2010 to 20 as the solar and energy revolution for the country. We have abundant solar. Speaker after speaker referred to it in the morning. There is a will, there is a determination, but can we make it happen? I think it will depend on us. I think if we don't make it happen, I will consider it's a national failure. Failure on the part of policymakers, failure on the part of entrepreneurs like us. I include in that category business people. Failure on the part of banks and financial institutions. Failure on the part of government to push a policy in terms of land reforms and other things. When I look at making this 50 gigawatt a reality, I look at the following 2-3 things as fundamental and vital. First one is the land availability. Today, whenever a solar project is being done, people end up spending almost about 4 to 5 months in terms of due diligence and getting it completed, go to patwaris and whatever the agencies are required. By the time you got a proper land document, it takes anywhere 4 to 5 months, and many times it's incomplete. One area of reform which is required. Here, my recommendation will be, I think if the government can identify specific areas for solar development. I think Gujarat was a wonderful model in the case of Charanka. 600, 700 acres of land, 1,000 acres of land, converting into a solar park. Whoever wanted it paid X amount of money. There was no hassle on the issue of land acquisition and availability. If the government can come out with a policy as far as the solar farms are concerned, you go to only these districts, identify 5 to 6 districts in Gujarat, 5 to 6 districts in Rajasthan, and say that anybody wants to put a solar farm, you pay that much money, land is available the next day. This can be made possible, and I think if we have got the will, almost all the states can implement, right from Andhra Pradesh, where some districts are available, same is Karnataka, Vijaypur, and other places. In Tamil Nadu, down south, almost every state has got adequate amount of land, which can be used for this development. Second is, I think some of the speakers in the morning session touched upon a point regarding the funding. Instead of going through a massive feed-in tariff mechanism, with the retail level tariffs are 7 or 8 rupees, and we can go through the bidding process, whatever it is required. But if the funding can be made available at a concessional rate, I think we can dramatically bring down the cost of these solar projects. Today, if you look at 2012-13, funding is available for 70% component, which is to come from banks, somewhere at 13% plus. So it delays the payback, it delays everything. So second vital requirement will be funding. Third is, I think government has to create a will and determination in terms of a separate limits for solar or this renewable energy funding. Today when we go to the bankers, they say typically we are overexposed in power sector. We cannot consider solar as separate, it is too risky. I remember meeting some of the banks CEOs who told me whenever my managers go to the bank officers associations for training programs, whether it is State Bank of India or anybody, they come back to me and tell me solar is too risky. Sir, don't even touch it because no, it will take a lot of time. Sometimes, what is the guarantee sun will be there? What is the guarantee transmission lines will be there? So it's a calls for massive education across, including particularly the bankers. I really find unless the bankers come forward, like IT revolution took place, mainly because the banks are also willing to fund it. And similarly, mobile revolution. So if we can get this act going, I am confident that we can achieve our goal of 50 gigawatt power for every household, 24/7, throughout the country. It can cover microgrids, mini grids, all types of requirements. Villages can be electrified, daytime power, 100% availability, whatever we are generating, we can use it for the rest of the time. And with some grid connections and smart grid introduction. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. And I want to leave the thought, it is very much possible and we must make it happen. It's all in our hands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Subramaniam. You really gave the major issues which need to be taken care to develop the sector. Now, I'll take from the other side, Dr. Sajid on the same subject.
Hello, I'm Saji Salkalachan from BHEL Bangalore, the electronics division which makes the power control, which is the power control division for power plants. We also have a small solar power group which manufactures solar cells, modules, and we are also into EPC contracts. We started this as a spin-off from semiconductor components, which we initiated long ago, at least 2-3 decades back. And we started making thyristors and diodes, and solar cells was a natural choice for us to diversify into. And we started work on solar cells for space applications, but we were not quite successful. So we ventured into terrestrial applications at that about 2 decades back. Of course, we have a very limited capacity for solar cells, about 10 megawatt, and modules about 30 megawatt. But we as a manufacturing group, we have gained enough expertise and indigenization for making these, converting these into power plants. Now, looking at the theme for this afternoon's seminar, 50 gigawatt is definitely a possibility, but I think we should look at certain role models for making this a reality. Indigenization, I would consider as a main point that needs to be taken care of. See, China's success story would be based on indigenization. Their components, the silicon wafers, their components for solar cells, modules, everything, for everything they have indigenous base. And they virtually control the price of solar cells or modules. See, the wafer, silicon wafer constitutes about 20% of the total system cost. 20% of the system costs comes from silicon wafer. And they are the biggest manufacturers. In fact, earlier there were only about 6 manufacturers in the world who were making polysilicon ingots. Tokuyama, then Wacker, Hemlock, and so on. Right now, Chinese have really taken over, into this, and they produce almost any of the components required for solar system. And indigenization and their adaptability to Indian conditions would be our prime concern. So we must have a good indigenous base for components. Another thing is the human resource development. I think we should take a cue from the Australians in this regard. In one of the universities, University of New South Wales, solar photovoltaic engineering is an MS course with a curriculum which is very well documented in the web also. Now, this gives rise to a lot of opportunities for growth. Germany, for example, had a lot of researchers in the last decade, and that would that would have helped them to grow at the equipment level and the research. See, from research, equipments are created and equipments are sold to the manufacturers. So this was a turning point for Germany. Similarly, we should also look at the possibility of going into education, higher levels of education, both at the higher levels as well as the ITA diploma levels and so on, which would go a long way in maintenance of the power plants and so on. Another aspect is that our technology needs to be a cutting-edge technology. At the moment, we are still around 15% for PV module efficiencies, and maybe much less for thin film modules. But breakthrough technologies are definitely required for going up in scale of the order of 50 gigawatt and so on. Because in order to conserve space, the only trick is to increase the efficiency of these modules. And this would mean that like new technology should get in. For example, ultra-thin wafer technology should come into the picture, which is just about 50 microns of silicon wafer. Probably, you have to avoid the screen printing technologies for contacting. You must have totally transparent conducting nano coatings. Or, there are miniaturization of the inverters. For example, you can have string inverters for smaller areas. See, these are, the technology must get into our field, totally. And probably we can definitely look into this aspect in a more wider sense. And probably these are some of the points that came to my mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saji. You have come out of the points, of course, on the rooftop, which we believe that there's a lot of business, and if there is a business, there got to be technology improvement for the maximum.
Are the micro units, and their power requirement is ranging from 10 kilowatt or 10 HP to 100 plus something. No, if something can be developed for them, say we are talking about the rooftop technology, all that. If some modules can be devised for them, which they can afford, no, it's an economic revolution in this country. And particularly, say for example, let me say that they see in Gujarat we have got almost more than 1,000 foundry unit having the small induction furnace, and their panel is somewhere around 100 kilowatt. If we can develop something which can provide 25% power through the solar route, it can bring down their production cost of the ferrous casting by say almost 1 rupee 50 paisa. And a small foundry having a production of say almost 3 ton per day, it can add to their the profitability and economy, and it can bring say competence in this MSME sector, and this through this we can bring a revolution. This is what I want to share with this fraternity, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solanki. We note your point, and I think we will include this because the captive use is also very much important. Now I'll request Mr. Pranav Mehta to say a few words.
If we look at the Indian scenario, solar scenario today, we have the experience now from 0 megawatts to 1,000 megawatts that we have been able to do. But presently, there is a lull. From April to December, at least foreseeable future, as I was discussing with Mr. Subramaniam, that not more than 500 to 600 megawatts will come in this particular year, because no policy announcement has come from Government of India for phase 2, and Gujarat also a lot of expected, but still yet nothing official has come. Having said that, despite all this is only a temporary lull, to my opinion, that it is a transitional phase in a transitional economy. But there is a certain emerging trend that I am just mentioning, and all the lessons that we have learnt in the last 2 years also we have to look at, which is what I will summarize. So as you all know, Jawaharlal Nehru mission is for 20,000, and some of us target the solar generation capacity at 50,000, 55,000 megawatts by 31, 32. And that is what we have been articulating in this Solar Empower seminars, fourth one in the series. Earlier it was 40,000 megawatts, and in one of the seminars I said that because I am restricted to 40,000, I am talking of 40,000. Then Professor Iyer immediately said that no, let us put it to 50,000, and that is how. But one great thing that we have totally opened a new chapter. Everybody was talking about 20,000, and today Professor Iyer and his team, all of us, are talking of 50,000 and even more. Somebody is talking of even 100,000, which at the moment I am not touching. So who are the people who are advocating this 55,000? In that, leading the pack is Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Then there is Mr. Suresh Prabhu. Then Mr. Anil Rajdan and Mr. Arora. All of us sitting here are advocating that 55,000 megawatts should be there. But how it can be done, I am not going into much detail, but one particular thing that Dr. Abdul Kalam said that way back in 2006, solar energy in particular requires unique, massive applications in the agricultural sector where farmers need electricity exclusively during the day. This could be the primary demand driver. We also need to embark on a program in solar energy systems and technology for both large centralized applications, like what we have done in Gujarat, as well as small decentralized requirements. Both have to be done simultaneously. So that means that whereas we have done a large one, at the same time, rather than going for 1,000 megawatt one plant, we should go to 1 megawatt into 1,000 plants in a decentralized manner, which will help the country in a big way. And another important area, which was briefly touched upon in the morning also, is that how you can do with the same land. Mr. Pandian himself had touched that how can you generate more power. We have to go for this carbon nanotube based PV cells, which are expected to give a high efficiency of the order of 50%, as against the less than 20% is what we are talking about. And as some of you must be knowing that in NREL Colorado, already 42% has been achieved in the laboratory, Boeing Spectro Lab, etc. So only thing is it has to be commercialized. And in India, we need to do that research. And of course, LED based 70 million households. Then we all know about this Jawaharlal Nehru mission phase 2, so I am not getting into that, but still we have to understand that in that what is the potential. 3,000 megawatts they are supposed to do, and additional 6,000 megawatt is envisaged. It is possible that they will announce about 1,000 megawatts in the immediate near future, and balance will be announced. But what I am mentioning as an emerging scenario is that we have done so far only 1,000 megawatt, whereas up to 2017, that is the phase 2, you have easily 9,000 megawatts, 9 times what we have done so far. That is the kind of potential. Then these mandatory RPOs, if we really enforce, it is going to be 10,000 megawatts from 2017. Phase 3 is the balance about 16,000 megawatts. So by 2022, and that is 2022 is not far off, it is 10 years. So by 10 years we are supposed to be doing this. So if we are to do this, there is surely a bright future. Off-grid application also envisaged that figure that is mentioned here, 1,000, 2,000 has now been increased to 4,000 megawatts. That is the latest development what Mr. Deepak Gupta told me yesterday. Simultaneously, we have to achieve this 15 million square meters solar thermal collector area by 2017 and 20 million by 2022. And as you know, in Gujarat, we have such manufacturers, at least 2 of them doing this, and outside Gujarat also there are quite a few. Then outside the Jawaharlal Nehru mission, states are, with whatever solar incidents they have, they should put in their effort, all the states. Gujarat has already implemented 690 megawatts and is mulling to announce something further, including canal top solar plants, desalination, off-grid, etc. Uttar Pradesh has recently issued a discussion paper and they have united suggestions. Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Rajasthan, all are planning solar projects. As mentioned by Solar Energy Tribe Group, it is a blog, recently new report indicates 15.3% growth rate for solar through 2015, which is not far off in the next 3 years. Gujarat Solar Park, you all know, so I am not getting into that. And the reasons for Gujarat's success is something that, yes, we have to learn from. These are the views of Gujarat Solar Park, all of you have seen. So, but success of Gujarat, I personally attribute it to excellent enabling provisions of the Gujarat Solar Policy 2009 and proactive role of the state government. And the wholehearted support received from Gujarat government agencies like JEDA, some of our friends are sitting here, GUNL, GPCL, JETCO, etc. And I consider SLDC as a part of JETCO for this purpose. Solar developers, in addition to this, solar developers bringing large investments of the order of $2 billion, state-of-art technologies, undertaking risk and making all-out effort, pulling no stops at meeting the deadline. Then another big potential that it holds, and that is again where, as you all know, Gujarat has shown the lead, is this canal top solar power. Already on Narmada Canal, on 1 kilometer, we have given this 1 megawatt, and triple advantages of this. Number one is that this land, all of us are talking about, that problem is solved. You save 5 acres of land requirement per megawatt. Then generally this canal is running where the consuming point, agricultural point is there. So the line loss is saved. And canals are available everywhere in the country. So this can be replicated throughout the country, and this is the feedback we want to give for phase 2 and phase 3. And in all seminars in Delhi, I have been urging to the people that take this up as a national cause, that canal top solar should be, what Gujarat has demonstrated should be there. And third important advantage of this is 90,000 liters per megawatt is saved from evaporation because of this canal top. So canal top I advocate in a big way. Then these things we have already discussed, all this Scheffler technology where we have supplied to the army at Leh. Because there it is difficult to reach the diesel, etc. So there, with the help of this, they are producing hot water, and also they are frying the food items. That is possible. Then more potential areas for solar energy, if we put our heads together. Solar desalination plants. As all of you know, after energy or simultaneously with energy, the country's problem is going to be water. And for water, if we apply solar and establish desalination plants, especially with our big coastal line, not only in Gujarat, but also Karnataka and all other places, Andhra and Tamil Nadu, Kerala, it can go a long way if we go for this desalination. Similarly, our need is solar cooling or air conditioning. In that also a lot of effort is going on. If we can really make it commercial, then it will be a big thing to do. Solar green buildings also hold out and then solar and biomass hybrid we have talked about in the morning. Wind hybrid also we are talking about. We can also produce hydrogen, which is the next future after CNG. We are talking of hydrogen blending. If this hydrogen can also be produced using solar, then there are some direct, you don't have to convert it into AC, DC future for solar applications. Also we should look at much improved solar storage also was touched upon in the morning. So these are the potential areas. So if we have DC solar fan Also, it will be, and I am told it is available off the shelf in some market. So, if that can be popularized, it can be a big thing to do. DC solar coolers, then DC solar agricultural pumps, solar lanterns already talked about, solar cookers in a massive way, newly designed solar roofs. This is another idea. Newly designed solar roofs using solar printing technology for rural applications. You know, where it is a tin shade, there also on to that, if we can really print. So, it will serve both the purposes of covering the roof and also providing solar energy where needed. In fact, some of us expect that what happened in the Silicon Valley 15 years ago will happen for solar in India in the next 15 years. Withstand this. And I am very happy that in the last 2 days discussion, as I mentioned in the morning and he also mentioned, that countervailing duty is in the offing. And let us continue over this. Another important thing, I endorse what you mentioned about bankers, that bankers have to be educated. But I can cite one example again, Gujarat and my own company. We had no balance sheet, Kiran Energy, and I could successfully convince here the government of Gujarat that if I have money otherwise, why you are asking balance sheet is simply because money. We don't have money, our promoters, we don't have money, but we have private equity funding. If I show to you, then that is how Gujarat gave us encouragement, and we told bankers that this is our strength, and we are the only without balance sheet non-recourse finance company, and it has paved the way. And we also held a seminar here, some of you attended, and I brought State Bank of India as sponsor, IDBI as sponsor, and I brought, in other words, bankers to the doorstep of developers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mehta. I'll request Mr. Rana.
Good afternoon, everybody. Of course, it's not the right time to talk about after lunch, so I'll sum up very fast. Initially, looking at the present installed capacity of solar, the 50 gigawatt looks to be a very tall target. But I fully agree with Mr. Subramaniam that when we talked about the mobile and other evolution, we never anticipated this type of growth. And similar thing certainly can happen in solar business also. But one thing we have to appreciate here, that mobile revolution or IT revolution was only confined to the office and other things. While here you have to take out the things to the field also. So two aspects are required to be considered here. One is the technology revolution, where BHEL or any other manufacturers or all those things have to do a very dramatic revolution in the technology upgradation. When the things become cheaper, definitely there will be more and more takers. So first thing we emphasize is the technology evolution. And I can certainly say that last year, compared to last year, 1 megawatt, 15 crores has come down to almost 10 crores. So that is because of the technological changes. And more prices will come down if you go for a cheaper and better version. So that's the first thing that we have to emphasize here, that technology evolution has to be taken place. And then only the prices of generation will come down, and it will be at the parity of thermal or gas, and then there will be no problem of absorbing in the grid also. So that is the first and fundamental thing we have to look at. Now, second thing, now coming to the installation, of course, a lot of things are talked about, but then we have to appreciate the problem of the developers or EPC contractor. They won't be able to find the land. And now the people have become so much conscious about the rights that it is very difficult to buy a land and a good location where the radiation level is very high. So here the intervention of government is a must. One thing, the government has to identify such area with proper radiation measurement, etc. And then they have to identify, and we have to follow the same structure that we have followed in solar park. Because here the solar developer has to do, not to do anything else but his job. Here he is given a land, so he's, I can tell you that within 7 months, I was present there. So in the month of May, the first developer started working in May 2011, and by December he was through, 25 megawatt. So this is the type of, if you give the facility, then they can do it. If you ask a solar developer to buy a land, private his facility, etc., go to the one door of government, another door of government, I don't think he can achieve anything. But if you provide this land, which is the most fundamental thing. Secondly, after providing land, he has to, again to look, of course, GETCO is going to provide the connectivity, but this time, GETCO is having a lot of things on his plate. See, he cannot meet all the requirements of so much of this thing. And if they are not able to meet with the 1,000 megawatt generation, how you can expect GETCO to meet with the connectivity for 10,000 megawatt or 20,000 megawatt? It's impossible for them. So for them, if you are providing something like a solar park, where the GETCO can provide one connectivity and the rest of the things are interconnected, so the evacuation facility becomes very easy, and then it becomes a very great success. So you can imagine that within 2 quarters, that is 6 months, we could commission about 215 megawatt, and without any hassle. So that is, I think, one important thing that we are. Now, third factor, as far as the state government is concerned, this is done. But as far as the central government role is concerned, I think RPO application emphasizes a must. Unless the RPO is totally put into place, there will be no takers. Right now, Gujarat, so many prospective developers are coming to Gujarat, but GUVNL has completed his RPO application, so they cannot sign any more. And that is the biggest problem for developers for getting the finances. So unless the RPO application is enforced by the Regulatory Commission, I think it's very difficult for the developers to go for it. So RPO obligation has to be enforced, and it's strictly monitored by all the regional electricity regulatory commission. Secondly, now REC regime is coming up, so we have to, it is only for up to 2017, but then we have to give a proper shape to this thing, so that after 5 years, they have complete things in their mind, that what is going to happen to REC. Now up to whatever things we are doing is only up to 217, but that is not adequate. We must give, because the solar project is likely to, life is about 25 years, so we have to consider from that point of view. So if all those things are considered, I think solar 50,000 megawatt is not a big target by 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rana. Of course, your points are well taken, because REC, if it is only up to 2017 and beyond that, there's no visibility. The financing or development will have a hit on this. So I request now Mr. Murthy say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think most of the points for the morning you all heard, and most of the problems are known, what is to be done. As far as the 50 gigawatt target is concerned, I don't think figures-wise there's no problem on that. And we are talking, in addition to that, the rooftop power generation. Well, here one major thing I would like to say is, if you want 50 gigawatts to be evacuated through grid operation, the grid also has to be ready equally. This is where the holistic approach is required for the solar development, because the solar power is basically available for 8 to 10 hours in a day, and this management of grid management has to take care of this, and there has to be transmission lines. If you look at the success story of Gujarat, the holistic approach which has come up, like Mr. Rana has just now said, at one point, if you are providing 25 megawatt or 200 megawatt, 250 megawatt, easy to evacuate that power through transmission lines. If you are putting 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 5 megawatt somewhere remote, and if you want to transmit it, it's going to be a huge problem for the transmission people. So when you're planning the solar parks or the solar activity, this is one of the reasons where you need to include the transmission and distribution sector into the holistic approach of solar power. And I think this is one of the major points I think has to go into the white paper, where you have different transmissions. Center, you have got power grid, and different states have different transmission sectors. All these needs to be taken care of. Because 50 gigawatt, and major parts will come from Rajasthan and Gujarat. If you see, the major power potential of solar will come only from these two states, and rest of the states will come little. And if you want to transfer this power to other states, in case of more power here, you need transmission, connectivity, and distribution. That means a grid management and a smart grid management is very important. The blackouts are basically the failure of a smart grid non-availability at the appropriate time. That's a major thing, rather than overdrawing capacities of the thing. Because when you're overdrawing, you need to cut the system out. So this is one of the major things I think has to go, that grid management has to come into the system. Well, on the other side, solar as a hybrid, that's one of the major things which can be developed. Wherever the biomass plants are there, they also have some extra space available. They can always develop small solar plants there, and which they can combine it together, provide for the evacuation from the same system. There's another area of development which can happen in the solar. And another major thing is the manpower, which you're talking human resources. This is one of the major issues today. In your colleges, in any of our colleges, in any of the institutions, we do not have anything related to power as such. You call it thermal sector, hydro, or nuclear, or solar. There is no curriculum, or not even a subject, or not even a paper on any of these power sectors. Even in the transmission distribution sectors, there are cases where fresh engineers do not know even the transmission level of what is the transmission level maximum available in this country. We have seen some of the engineers who couldn't answer, who is supposed to be one of the first in the university has come up. He feels the transmission level maximum in India is 220 kV. That's the level of knowledge from the industry. That means there's a big gap between the institutions and the industry and the power sector today. And this gap needs to be bridged. And this has to be one of the major issues, which I always say in most of the seminars. One of the points I raise up is this issue. This needs to be bridged up. And this education has to go down from the experts. And the experts need to go to education institutions, and there should be some interactions to be provided by these institutions. I think this is one of my suggestions which should also go into the white paper. Well, from the morning we heard many things. I have one point. Mr. Pondian mentioned big. Yes, I think we all must think big. I remember it's 90 in one of my, I was working in a company which was just making losses, and we had 45% bank debt. So we had a core team which we have to work at that time to recover back in the next 3 years. That stock get given to us. So we use the word, I use the word think big. When I said big, B stands for brains. In India, we have a lot of brains, and we're very good in that. I stands for innovation. There's no dearth of innovation. And G stands for guts. When I say guts should make a decision. And I think in India, certain level of things you lack guts. The managements of the companies, like private sector, have guts. But guts, when I'm talking at the political level, guts at the administrative level, and guts at the on the level. That's where we need to think big. If that big is done, I think everything will be done, everything will fall in place. That's what I would like to add up. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. We take your points, and I think these are very important points to be covered in the white paper. And I'll ask Mr. Dhar, and after that we'll have a open house discussion, have your questions, and let's have your views, and then we'll include that also in the white paper.
Thank you, Mr. Arora. It's a funny coincidence. In the morning also I was the last speaker, and now I also am the last speaker. So I try to make my views as concise as possible. See, we're talking about 50,000 megawatt, 1,000 megawatt as of today, 50,000 megawatt. 50,000 megawatt as of today's prices means anything between 5 lakh to 6 lakh crores. What is that money? 5 lakh to 6 lakh crores at a capital cost of 13 to 14%. 50,000 megawatt translates into almost 3 lakh acres of land. Do we have that kind of land available? So what to do? Fundamental factor is how to make this solar mission viable and sustainable and saleable. Funding. I mean, why government cannot waive off or subsidize the interest factor? When China provides capital cost at 3% to the power sector industry, what's stopping our country from taking such a decision? Number one. They cannot introduce tax holidays, because tax itself takes almost 30% of the total, the money factor that's involved in any project. So unless the funding is taken care of, who will venture into this kind of industry? And with the current efficiency levels of almost 15 or even 20%, the unit cost is not anything less than 15 rupees. So how many of us are prepared to even pay 4 rupees to a unit? But the governments will fall, literally. So who is going to subsidize that kind of unit rate? So all these things come. So this is what has come basically to my mind as a student of marketing, and rest is of course to the specialists and the government bodies, how they look at it. Thank you.
It's a very, very valid point that people who have money, they should come forward and acquire the technology for the country and development of the sector. We would now like to have questions from your side, your suggestions, and then we can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. I congratulate the organizer to plan and give a detailed thought about things. Basically, I'm a system operator. There are certain points I would like to just highlight you with respect to present operational principles adopted throughout the India and the guideline issued by the CERC and availability-based tariff implemented so far. Now, suppose today with the about 12,000 megawatt generation in our hand, with 500 megawatt solar and say 2,000 megawatt wind with us, we have a lot of grid constraints and the operational difficulties are there. And it is not possible to cope up the variation of the wind specifically with respect to variation of the other conventional unit and to balance the system throughout the day, keeping the interest of the stakeholder in the mind. If we take the practical example, what happens? Suppose we go to 20,000 megawatt by 2020. I anticipate with respect to Gujarat, hardly we will have 30,000 megawatt of installed capacity, out of which if the 20,000 megawatt is a solar, it shall not be possible to operate any of the conventional plant during the day. And once the plant declared its capacity, the fixed charge are to be borne by the distribution company or the people by and large. So these are the certain issues one need to address and these are the commercial issues. Apart from that, as a system operator, without proper forecasting, the scheduling of the power is very, very difficult. And if the power is not scheduled, and when the power is to the quantum of more than 50% of the total state grid, it shall not be possible to operate the grid at all. And now, after the two collapse in the last month, the grid discipline has been viewed very seriously, and we need to adhere to the grid standards and regulation implemented and followed very spuriously. So it is necessary to give a detailed thought about the operational strategy of this 20,000 megawatt, if we are seriously planning about it, with respect to, because when we have observed that out of the 690 megawatt installed capacity, during the month of May, we have received the maximum generation of 480 or 490 megawatt. So naturally, the grid has to respond accordingly. And there has to be some spinning reserve. Now, variation in the spinning reserve with respect to race-based project is possible. But if we compare that, do we expect 20,000 gigawatt of the race-based variable plant by the time the solar comes in picture? If it is not there, thermal, it shall not be possible to vary up to this extent. And we will bear the fixed cost of the declared capacity. So many other issues are there. So I think we may take this note of this and we may give a detailed thought of this. And then our dream or we will able to visualize our projected target meaningfully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these ideas are very much important when you are increasing the capacities. And when these capacities in relation to the conventional power is disturbed from 0.1% to 5%, it makes a difference. Definitely, when you talk about scheduling or spinning reserve, when we carry out our electric power survey, we consider these spinning reserves. We also consider the load loss factors. We also consider energy not served. So we have to now consider the solar power and renewable power when we integrate while carrying out our studies on balance of power. Thank you.
We had been talking of three major constraints on the big size projects, that is land, power evacuation, and the financing. The rooftop system, individual house system, can eliminate all three of these problems. And we had been writing to Gujarat government for last 3 years to look at the German model and provide the policy which can enable the rooftop systems to come in picture where individual can, reap the benefit directly. So I think it's very important to write in this white paper to come out with this policy as soon as possible, because this solar actually is a distributed power, and rooftop model will solve all these three problems, which are the biggest hurdles as of now. And each individual with dual meter system, and we Indians being very highly entrepreneur people, we will invest, we will put up a solar panel in modular form. People can do the zero bill for them. There is a motivation to go to zero billing, because net power generated and exported will be same. And then there will be a motivation to generate power, export and earn money. This is a model which is a successfully established model. It is as significant to India as it is in Germany. So I think it is a need to expedite this policy so that the big boost can come on this.
Very good point. It's only not the rooftop concept. The idea is when we are doing industrialization, we should make it a point, because if you look at the type of power available in India, basically it's mostly in island mode actually, you see. It's not grid parallel, okay? So if you are putting industries, and because the grid, as we all know, cannot cope up with all these variances which are required, so make it a policy, any new industry coming up, and this is what is also happening in Europe, in the big areas where the big roofs are there, they are all utilizing that space to put solar panels or PV panels on the roof and provide electricity for their own electricity and heat for their own consumption, with the possibility of exporting electricity, for instance.
Only one addition in this is that we at CII had been doing a lot of calculations to make this model viable. One of the major cost and major hurdle for individuals to put up a rooftop solar was the battery. So if you provide the grid connect system and if you avoid the battery, the capital cost goes down, the maintenance hurdle goes down, and it becomes a very operational friendly system. So it has to go without battery. Grid connected solar rooftop system is what we have been suggesting.
And make the coal plants expensive, because that is typical. If you look at it from the environmental issue and put your emission controls in such a way, then you will soon see how viable all these other projects will come.
I think the point is well taken, but presently we are trying to acquire technology on the manufacturing and also on the construction and improving performance. When it comes to the net metering or smart metering, we'll also cross that bridge.
On the issue of manufacturing, I have one comment. See, if you look at our progress as far as semiconductor industry is concerned in the country, we have not been a great success story. And if you look at it, it is mainly Taiwan, China. Over a period of time, even Japan has to vacate, US has to vacate. You have to continuously keep on adding capacities, because a 100 megawatt line about 5 years ago when we started solar used to cost us about $30 to $35 million. Today it's available for $15 million. So I am saddled with a high cost asset. I am not able to depreciate because unless I keep on adding rapidly, I cannot bring down the capital cost. So this is one of the problems also which we find we are facing.
Yeah, that's true, because when you were putting out these units, the silicon price was based at $50 a kg. And every manufacturer or manufacturer of the machine consider the end cost and then gives the machine cost. That's the reason.
And of course, China also tackled this problem by rapidly adding capacity. If you look at the capacities in 2006, Chinese capacity versus Indian capacity, the gap was hardly anything. And look at today, all the capacities which came up in the country was 2006 and 7. After that, we couldn't add, whereas they went into almost about 40 gigawatts.
Thank you very much.
Can I add a point? I come from Sterling Wilson. We did 82 megawatts last year, and my concern is very short. With the price pressure that we have, and we'll continue to always have price pressures, the quality and the design standards lack right now. MNI has been talking for now at least a couple of years that these things will come in place, and that's which is worrisome, because what might happen is with the price pressure, the EPC, we are an EPC company, if we do something wrong and the industry gets a bad name, there is no going back to that. It will be really a collapse of the industry. The faith of the bankers or the consumers will be really hit if we do it wrong. And that's where we all know we are in a sort of situation where prices have gone up, except for the modules. Everything, copper, steel, concrete has gone up. So there's no real reason for things to go down. And if you see the volatility of the module price, which is, you've seen the spate of bankruptcies which have been happening, this is not a sustainable thing. So if we do want to control quality, we need to have some set, and associations probably will have to play a major role, rather than regulatory effects coming from government, which probably may be a detrimental effect to the growth.
See, related to this is also the bank's funding approval process. When you look at Germany, there is a bankability clearly defined. What modules you are using, what inverters you are using, who is your EPC contractor, what type of guarantees are coming. Here, our bankers are also not fully educated. We need to educate them. And if, just like credit approval for credit card, similarly, we can extend it to any type of projects also of this nature. And we have to be in a position to perform better, because the PLF in this country goes up to 23-24%. We have a project which is doing 27% PLF in Bhilwara in Rajasthan, which is amazing. The number one project of ours, Tamil Nadu, we got more than 21-22% on a consistent basis even after 3 years. So yield is not an issue. As long as the system is done, as my colleague, as my friend from Sterling Wilson has mentioned, as long as the system performance is well managed, we will be able to deliver. I don't think today we lack that intellectual capital in the country.
I fully agree with you. We don't lack an intellectual capital, but it's only that the bankers still have certain perceptions, because unless they see the similar results for 10 years what they see in the conventional, they don't get convinced. And then different types of things have happened. When you compare with other countries, there was a feed-in tariff or declared tariff. But with the reverse bidding, who's failing whom, we don't know. But somebody's trying to fail somebody. So whether the regulator is wrong or the bidders are wrong, somebody is wrong.
I do not, my comment there is nobody is wrong. It is possible to deliver today these projects at much less than 9 crores, including the land cost. See, it's a question of how the developer is putting the final capital cost in the system. If you look at it, as far as the capital cost for the project system, it has dramatically dropped as far as the EPC and systems part is concerned. Land, we may be paying a bit more, but interest cost is the biggest killer.
You must have noticed that the Gujarat regulator has always gone in for feed-in tariff. Because, so far. But possibly because we believe that at least in the first 5 years, it should be feed-in tariff till we are very near grid parity, which we are not today.
I think your point is taken.
Reducing cost. It's very legitimate. We all think of reducing costs because we want to bring down the aggregate cost on the total, actually. You see. The problem is we don't realize what is the incentive which we are giving for that, actually. You see. So now one issue could be, like you rightly pointed out, the feed-in tariff should be made attractive so that an investment becomes viable. Second thing, I have seen where people have reduced too many prices. Those projects have failed completely because it's a pricing concept, and if you don't make your pricing model properly, you will never get the energy returns, actually. So these are the thoughts, which we should go, but to balance that, there should be some other means and incentives, like I mentioned today early morning, based on taxation issues or other funding propositions, so that one disadvantage on that side could be offset by another initiative on the other side, you see. But to make things cheap, nobody will care for it, You make things cheap, nobody will value that. So the question is, am I doing the right thing by making things cheap? Yeah. No, well, that's even I'm just saying the final marketing concept for power. Power cannot be cheap because power is expensive. So if we want to make power available to everybody, that means that we have to start saving on wastage of power, because that is one of the major issues what we are doing today. And if we don't control that, then there's no end to our power demand, actually. So you have to put certain legislations there to say, okay, this has to be done, otherwise it won't function. Like I said, any new factory coming up, make your own power plant. If you're a new building coming up, you always say you have to have your own garages, for instance. Otherwise you don't want cars to be parked on the street. So similar thought should be given in a much broader sense. It will add to cost, but it will also generate more volume, and it will generate more revenue in that sense.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, this is Mahesh from Abhijit. Actually, I have one point on the regulatory part and second part on the infrastructure issues. First part I want to convey is, first, our bidding system is reverse tariff or reverse bidding tariff, whatever it is we are calling it. This is only directly going on the financial terms without any evaluation of the technology or the ability of this. That should be evaluated. Why if you see all the projects which are going in, either if you take hydro projects, other projects, first technical feasibility is being studied and then evaluated on technical grounds, then only financial bids have been open on. That it should be implemented into this system also. Why? Because if you see, most of the developers are coming up from the jewelry merchants or somewhere else who are non-technical people coming into it. Somewhere they fail in, that's going to create a big havoc into this machine itself. That should be taken care properly.
I think you have a point, but then we need to be a little positive. We started with 50 megawatt with a feed-in tariff, a GBI scheme grid, and then we went into a feed-in tariff from various states. Then came the Nesta Solar Mission with the reverse bidding. So things are evolving. It's a dynamic situation. There will be players who may not have a clear understanding of the industry. They consider the end product is the same, whether it comes from nuclear or from coal or hydro. The end product is electricity. So what the electricity they'll be able to sell and what is the return. I understand your point. But yes, this point need to be put that the criteria of selection of the developer or the technology should be defined, not only on the basis of net worth or the turnover. You're right.
And second issue is, sorry sir. Yeah, second issue is, now we are talking about the core technologies and we are talking about only the whatever the wafer or silicon machines or any other mirrors or anything we are talking about. Then the next requirement, if you want to go to 50 gigawatt hours, the structural supporting required for this and the precision structural manufacturing requirements, if you imagine it, if you take a 50 megawatt solar thermal project, 9,000 to 10,000 tons of structural precision structure is coming, a lightweight precision structure, which is coming into that project, which if you take it into 50,000 gigawatt hour projects, what is the precision requirements? That is when we see into China and all, there is a huge infrastructure is developed. It's not that China is far, I'm not to compare that, but they have a huge infrastructure going in. Such infrastructure need to be developed in India to make ourselves competitive and to make our goals achieved.
So, my view is that the competitive bidding has become order of the day after all the scams the country has gone through. Second point is, as long as the output is defined, it is a question of design, build, own, operate, and then transfer. As morning somebody commented, 3-4 years of operations and maintenance contract. So the contractor who is picking up, he's responsible for A to Z in the value proposition. And what I'm finding is that it is working out okay as long as financial security is there for the project. My one recommendation for the forum will be the Solar Holding Corporation, if it can come out with a policy for the farms at a concessional interest instead of 13% which you are paying for the debt, if it is 9%, the cost of the project and the payback comes down by almost by 20 to 25%. Because the impact of the interest cost is too high. And the clear fundamentals can be land must be available, which must be only in one of the acknowledged solar park or something. Second is you have to complete the project in X time frame. 6 months, 5 megawatt, whatever it is. Our experience is we have collapsed the time almost by 90% compared to when we started 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 5 megawatt took us 9 months. Today we are able to do it in 1 month. That's the change.
So I think your point on structures and other ancillary equipment for solar thermal or PV is well taken, because at least those things you don't need so much imported items when you can make in India. I think that can bring down the cost and also availability, increase the visibility of working at lower rates.
Why? Because these structures are becoming a patented-like thing, and somebody we need to work out. Even IIT Delhi is working on the structures with tunnel testing and all that. We need to develop that structure. It has to be fabricated and machined in India with the traditional technologies.
No, I understand. When you say it's a complicated and difficult structure, because it is the technology has not been developed, so you just copy the same technology. When you develop structure on your own, there will be your type of structure, what is available in the country.
Only one point which I would like to make, unless you are referring to aluminum structures. As far as it's a mild steel structures, our experience is based on wind velocity and also A-class engineering companies vetting the design review. We have brought down the structure weights from 120 metric tons per megawatt to less than 50 metric tons per megawatt in the last 9 months. Sheerly by Indian engineering, which is vetted by none other than companies like Lemaire, Germany, those kind of companies.
Today, when we are talking about solar, normally a supplementary term is, or rather a complementary term is obligation. Unless there is an obligation, solar would not be performed. So there is an untapped market which I genuinely feel. Even I would like to second Solanki ji when he said about captive power projects. Now what I feel is on an average, the commercial units in Gujarat, the industrial tariff applicable to them is around 7 to 7.5 rupees as on date. So when you compare with an escalation of 3% year on year, by the end of 5th year, you would already be paying, the industrial units would be paying around 9 rupees, 8.5 rupees. So when you calculate, we have already reached grid parity in those sense. So when we have a clear-cut policy, I would emphasize if we can have something in the white paper itself wherein we can emphasize on a clear-cut policy for captive projects, wherein we can have a single point wherein people who are generating, who are putting up their captive projects, the units generated can be offset against the units consumed. One thing. And second thing, we can have a net metering. These two things, simple things, can actually put these players to put up their captive projects voluntarily. There would not be an enforcement for that. And as on date, if they are paying 7.5, so you can imagine that way solar is actually going to come up. So they can come up with a solar project within their existing premises, or they can use some solar park land wherein already the evacuation and all those things are also available.
Yes, I think those lines, certain industries are thinking, maybe like they did in case of Capco in Tamil Nadu, there can also be industries make a cooperative and put a small solar plant on this basis.
Right, so the moment there is a clear-cut policy on this, the force would definitely go high very substantially.
Yeah. Sorry, sir. One more thing, actually. If you see in European solar plants and Indian solar plants, Indian doesn't have a auxiliary consumption is netted into our total generation. When in other cases in European, they are allowing us to take import from their grid, and that is being charged at the their grid rates, not at the generation rate at which we are developing it.
The regulator, the power purchaser, when he says he's going to buy at 10 rupees, why should he give you at 3 rupees? So he's.
No, it is only, it's only an incentive to the developer. Yes, certainly it is we are putting a high technology, high cost production into that. It's an incentive to give you a development, to encourage the development. It's not that for sake of anything.
Yeah,
It can
this was put up in the public hearing in CRC, also in many regulators, but they did not agree to this. So that's the, until unless the power purchaser agrees or the distributor agrees, this cannot be done.
Can I have the last question? See, consistency of policy is very important. Some time back, all the industrialists were encouraged to put the captive power. Today, of course, this can be very, may not be agreed to most of people here. But today, those who have the captive power generation, they have the RPO obligation. So this is again going from incentive, it is to an extent coming to a penalization. Also, I believe command and control will not help any industry to grow. If you see the wind energy, as the feed-in tariffs have increased, the capital cost over a period has increased. Though the manufacturing industry has more matured and productions have increased. Because the manufacturers have done so calculation that payback period for the buyer remains same. So I think this is what we have seen in wind energy should not happen in solar energy. So I'm strongly against the RPO obligations. It should be support than command and control.
Maybe this is the last question. Thank you very much, please.
Sir, I want to focus on R&D work which is going on in India. Why not MNRE or REPA or SCFI? They work out some institutions which focus on R&D work, like we have in solar photovoltaic or solar thermal. I am a student from PDPU, which is perhaps the only one in the whole India which is focusing on energy sector. So can we have this idea that REPA or SCFI coming up with institutions and
REPA has already proposed for this with the ministry, and World Energy Environment Institute, Renewable Energy Institute, WIRE, is already proposed by REPA. It is under consideration. It will come very soon.
Thank you very much. We really had views of all the panelists sitting here and also your questions. So we have noted down the points and we are still open to get your points, if maybe second thought or maybe tomorrow, through the email to Falcon Media, and we'll try to include those points which have not come today. Thank you so much.
Okay, this was wonderful discussion. In fact, this white paper was waiting to take shape for almost the last, let's say, 3 years. But we wanted some time, we wanted content, we wanted different sets of views. We thought this is the right time, come to Gujarat, the state that is done, and then use this opportunity to take our 4 years of path of NPower Solar in generating a first white paper. And then I would assure you that if this kind of interaction continues, and I can tell you that we would again come next year with this event to Gujarat only, to Ahmedabad only. That I am first promising, because of the response we have received from the state. With that, I thank all of you. So I have some mementos, some appreciation for all our speakers here. And may I request Arora Saab to first distribute to everybody. The first one is for Mr. Pranav Mehta. Thank you, Pranav ji, for being here with us today. The next one for Mr. P.H. Rana. Thank you, Rana Sahab, as usual, and even I see that even after there is no retirement, there is no nothing, I know you are in a strong zone. And may I have the next one for Mr. K. N. Subramaniam. Thank you, Subramaniam Sahab, for all your wisdom and whatever you have shared with us, the time you have given to us today. Thanks once again. May I have the next one for Mr. Solanki. Thank you, Solanki Sahab. We will definitely keep meeting like this many more times. And may I have one for PVSN Murthy for sure? Thank you, Murthy Sahab. definitely. And the last speaker's name, I'm a little bit, okay, Dr. Saji Salkalachin, Additional General Manager from BHEL. And BHEL is a great friend of Inertia. And we have two BHEL stalwarts here then. You know, we have Ashwini Darji, the ex. Definitely, definitely. So I think we have been able to do justice today, and our email IDs are available. You please write back to us. We are going to close on this white paper agenda to be presented to the government exactly 30 days from now, right? Because we need to have deadlines, right? We need to little bit work like the Europeans, you know, like Khanasa would put a time frame. So let us work. After we receive those suggestions from you, we'll incorporate all of that. And I can say that if we are all lucky, then October end would see the shape of the white paper. Even I would say let solar thermal succeed. In spite of my skepticism on that, I wish that it succeeds in a big way, like solar PV, because more the merrier, and we need all of this into the grid. Thanks all of you, and you everything is open. You want to note down our email IDs, I will declare, is inertia.falcon@gmail.com is one ID, which is the corporate ID of the media company, and the other ID that you can, I will repeat, inertia.falcon, inertia with an E, you have it, ENERTIA.falcon@gmail.com, and the other email ID where you can send suggestions is repa.india@gmail.com. Repa is simple, R-E-P-A, repa.india@gmail.com. So we look forward to hear from you over the next month, right, 30 days from today, and all of those suggestions will definitely be taken in, and there will be a very strong outcome because of the strong support that solar is getting. Thanks, Gujarat. Thanks, Ahmedabad. Thank everybody.